It's your planet. It's my planet. It's our planet. It's mostly my planet, but it's not the planet of critical race theory. Planet Hall coming back at you again, ladies and gentlemen. Saturday edition. Yeah. Yeah, man. Hope everybody's enjoying their Saturday. I'm actually in the process of marinating some chicken wings. I'm about to throw on the smoker and get it down. So today I'll be sipping on a probably one of my favorite German beers is the Hefeweizen Schafferhofer. It's the grapefruit beer. It's very, very good. Tip of the cap to our brethren in Deutschland. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about more insanity. As I'm sure you could tell by the title, more insanity. And honestly, we've come to expect nothing less, right? So with the whole vaccine mania that's going on right now in terms of people reacting and, there's videos of people fainting and all this other crazy stuff. And there's videos of people faking getting vaccinated and all that crazy stuff. But anyway, there was an article that was published by the New York Times about how the vaccine, according to one intellectual, the vaccine should be withheld from elderly people because they tend to be more predominantly white. And this is an opportunity to, quote unquote, level the playing field. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump in. This is an article from the Washington Examiner, and the title reads, "Doctors suggest CDC should deprioritize elderly for coronavirus vaccine. They're whiter, and we should, quote, level the playing field." See, I didn't make that up. It sounds like I did. That's what I'm saying. Satire's dead in 2020. The crazier the shit sounds, the higher the possibility or the probability that it's actually true. All right, so here we go. An article in the New York Times quoted several doctors suggesting that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention should deprioritize distributing the coronavirus vaccine to the elderly because they are whiter, quote, whiter. And here we have a quote. Quote, "Older populations are whiter," Dr. Harald Schmidt, a health and policy expert at the University of Pennsylvania, said. "Society is structured in a way that enables them to live longer. Instead of giving additional health benefits to those who already had more of them, we can start to level the playing field a bit." So many things wrong with this statement. Number one, that a doctor is saying it. I don't understand how this man is not this. How is this man not? I don't think disbarred is the word. I think that's for lawyers. But he should not be a practicing doctor talking like this. This is like Dr. Kevorkian talk. This is like Dr. Death talk. At the University of Pennsylvania. So there you go, Ivy League. You know, when I see this, I'm reminded of a quote from Thomas Sowell on one of the Uncommon Knowledge video interviews, I guess you would say, where he said, you might say the road to hell is paved with Ivy League degrees. Yeah, this is that. This is another step in that direction. And you know what's funny is, there's an easy fix for this. Hey, white people, stop sending your kids to these schools. There you go. If you want to get rid of this kind of crazy shit. I mean, if I were a white person, hell, I'm not a white person. And I am already, in the event I have children, college, I don't know. Because there's better ways to make money without strapping yourself with an ass load of debt. And number one. And number two, bachelor's degrees are essentially useless at this point. Number three, they don't teach you they're not what they used to be. Colleges and universities are not what they used to be. They used to be an institution for higher learning. Now they're an institution for liberal indoctrination, period. So, and a lot of these people, not only are they indoctrinated, but they're completely unable to rationalize their points because they never have to. They're completely unable to hear any kind of opinion that dissents with theirs because they've never had to. So, yeah, I think it's time for all of us to kind of reconsider the value we put on traditional colleges and universities. Not all, because I'm sure there still exists some that allow a free exchange of all ideas, not a free exchange of left ideas. Okay, let's move on. Excuse me. The article titled "The Elderly versus Essential Workers: Who Should Get the Coronavirus Vaccine First" contain multiple examples of doctors appearing to suggest that race should be a factor in the vaccine rollout, which the CDC has been accused of supporting. There you go. In the CDC, the same CDC that said white supremacy is a public health hazard. A lot of our institutions have completely bankrupted their credibility. And in my opinion, the CDC is one of them, at least for me. I'm not telling you how to think. I would never portend to do that. But for me, the CDC is certainly one of them. Okay. Schmidt told the Washington Examiner that it would not be a fair characterization to describe his comments as a, quote, race-based approach. I had to read that wrong. Hold on. Schmidt told the Washington Examiner that it would not be a fair characterization to describe his comments as a, quote, race-based approach. No, I read it right. And pointed to an essay articulating his approach in more detail. Well, sir, when you say we shouldn't give it to the elderly because they tend to be whiter, and that is the discriminating factor as to why, that's the discriminating factor as to why the elderly should not receive it. Not only the discriminating factor, it is the determining factor. It is literally, that's the only reason you gave to support that idea. So then saying that it's not a race-based approach is insane. But these are the kind of people that are teaching your children when you send them to the University of Penn. Okay, here we go. The fundamental point is this. This is a quote from this insane man. The fundamental point is this. Among the population 65 and older, many can live socially distanced safely, and with relatively less inconvenience until they receive a vaccine, Schmidt said. But far more among the essential workers have the option, especially frontline workers. For them, getting a vaccine sooner can literally be of existential importance. Therefore, vaccinating all healthy people 65 plus before essential workers is likely to make racial and economic disparities worse. Okay. So, number one, this is what they call a walk back, right? Because if you noticed, the first thing out of his mouth, the fundamental point is this: among the population 65 and older, many can live socially distanced safely with relatively less inconvenience until they receive a vaccine. So then why didn't you say it to begin with? If that's what you meant, then why didn't you lead with that to begin with? But I guarantee you his ass found himself in a little bit of hot water, not much, because, colleges are going to protect him. He's liberal. But now we have to try to use our medical, inform our racist ideology and just kind of slip in a little bit of a couple of medical kernels to appease the masses, right? Okay. Therefore, vaccinating all healthy people 65 plus before essential workers is likely to make racial and economic disparities worse. And then he brought it home, but very lightly, because he's talking about these racial and economic disparities, right? It's a very abstract theory that they like to kind of throw around with no real explanation as to what it really means and what the implications of such are. Okay. And likewise, continuing his quotation, and likewise within each population group, it is therefore critical to use a measure of such as a socially vulnerable. Whoa. Let me read this again. And likewise, within each population group, it is therefore critical to use a measure such as social vulnerability index to make sure the more vulnerable people are offered a vaccine first. So it seems like he just contradicted his previous statement, or his initial statement was saying we don't need to give it to 65 and older because they can live socially distanced. Okay, but his last statement is this. And likewise, within each population group, it is such a social it is therefore critical to use a measure such as a social vulnerability index to make sure that the more vulnerable people are offered a vaccine first. Well, the more vulnerable people within any population group, if you're talking about a race here, would be the elderly. That is factual. I don't think I need to throw a disclaimer on that. I think we know that this affects old people in a more dire way than it affects us. The survival rate for younger people is much higher than it is for older people. Now, both rates are pretty high, but that aside, okay, so it seems to me like you just contradicted yourself, like you literally just talked yourself in a full circle. Let's read it one more time. The whole quotation, and you tell me. The quote, the fundamental point is this: among the population 65 and older, many can live socially distanced safely and with relatively less inconvenience until they receive a vaccine, Schmidt said. But far more among the essential workers don't have that option, especially frontline workers. For them, getting a vaccine sooner can literally be of existential importance. Therefore, vaccinating all healthy people 65 plus before essential workers is likely to make racial and economic disparities worse. And likewise, within each population group, it is therefore critical to use a measure such as a social vulnerability index to make sure that the more vulnerable people are offered a vaccine first. Now, as I reread this, could it possibly be that he's saying the people that are more exposed to it? I don't know. But, well, you know what? Let's make a good faith argument and assume that's what he meant. Let's assume he wasn't contradicting himself. Okay, fine. So we want to use a social vulnerability index, whatever the hell that is, to determine who we give it to first. Okay, so if you want to go frontline workers first, fine. But why is it that comes? I don't understand why this is we have to do this or that. It seems to me that you can treat both. It seems to me that you should treat both. It seems to me that there's this small little annoying factor that liberals like to overlook a lot more nowadays called personal choice, where someone who's a frontline worker may say, you know what, don't need it. I'm 20 something years old. If I get it, I'll beat it. The statistics and the science is with me. Give it to that older person who has a far likely chance of dying from this. And then the problem kind of resolves itself. It seems to me that when you let people make their own choices, a lot of these problems are alleviated. Crazy idea, but let's keep moving. Marc Lipsitch, a Harvard University epidemiologist, said that the teachers should not be treated as essential worker when it comes to passing out the vaccine if the goal is to reduce health inequities, in part because they are often very white. Marc Lipsitch, a Harvard University, there's another Ivy League for you. The road to hell, Ivy League degrees. Marc Lipsitch, a Harvard University epidemiologist, said that teachers should not be treated as essential workers when it comes to passing out the vaccine if the goal is to, quote, reduce health inequities, in part because they are often very white. So here we go again with another Ivy League professional here suggesting that race should be a deciding factor in terms of who gets the vaccine. So then for now, I'm kind of going back on what Schmidt said, because he tried to dress it up in terms of, we need to talk about people who are exposed. Well, teachers are certainly exposed. But if the fact that they're white could carry enough weight to push them out of to disqualify them from being able to get a vaccine, then that is the primary factor, regardless of whatever else you try to dress it up as. So obviously it's not about vulnerability, it's about race. And what's interesting to me about this, more than these are two Ivy League intellectuals, is that both of these men are white. So if you're really about that life, then kill yourself, right? Because if you're really about knocking out these inequities and you are white people and you believe that white people, if anyone needs to die, it should be the white man. Well, you guys just so happen to be white men. What say you take one for the team? Lead by example. Jim Jones, drink first. But they won't. Because this is all just political propaganda and pandering. And quite frankly, it could be that both of these men are insane. But let's read on. Mr. Lipsitch's quotation continues. Teachers have middle-class salaries and are often very white. And they have college degrees, Lipsitch said. Of course, they should be treated better. But they are not among the most mistreated workers. We're going to treat you better by not giving you a vaccine that could possibly save your life. That sounds like treating someone better. When asked by the Washington Examiner whether or not it was his belief that reducing health inequities should be factored into the vaccine rollout, Lipsitch's answer was yes. So he doubled down. It's my personal belief, which I hold as a citizen and someone who is informed about the extent of health inequities through my professional work, Lipsitch said, it is a question of values informed by science. So I understand that others may differ on this point. Well, no. The fact that others may differ on this point is probably a good indicator that it's not informed by science. Science is objective. So regardless of how I feel about you, again, let's use something else that we learned from science. Let's keep it really simple. Opposite poles attract. Right? So, okay, if I take a piece of metal and I have a magnet and I put that magnet next to the metal, let's assume it's ferrous metal, and boom, I get it attracts to it. Well, that's science. Science, the principle of science there is that yes, that will happen. So regardless of whether or not I disagree with the person who showed me that principle remains. So even irrespective of how I feel about this man, I have zero grounds to object to the scientific principle. Let's use the water cycle. We learn condensation, we learn evaporation, we learn precipitation. That's not in order. So precipitation, evaporation, condensation. There you go, in order. Well, regardless of how I feel about the person who taught me that, regardless of my political affiliation, if it's something contrarian to theirs, regardless about how I feel about anything else, that principle remains. So I have zero grounds to object. So when you say it is a question of values informed by science, which that's very interesting because values informed by science, that's a very interesting dichotomy. To have values, because typically values are religious, cultural, things of that nature. And it's usually something that's completely divorced of science. Now, you could take something like environmentalism that has scientific overtones and wanting to recycle. But if you boil that down to the root, if you take it down to the least common denominator, well, that stems from the value of being a good steward. That stems from the value of conservatism. That stems from the value of taking care of the things in your charge or things that are around you. That's not scientific at all, but it does inform a scientific area in terms of ecology. So this is asked backwards in how he says this, but okay. It's a question of values informed by science. So I understand that others may differ on this point. Lipsitch added that his quoted comment in the article is purely factual, but could possibly be misconstrued. How could that be misconstrued? You said, let white people die. And see, this is the game. They'll say what they mean, and then when they catch some flack, they'll double back, throw a bunch of words out there, hope it confuses everybody, hope you're not paying attention, and we just proceed with business as usual. The ACIP framework lists reducing inequity as a goal, Lipsitch said, referring to the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices that is tasked with constructing the vaccine's distribution plan. I simply said that the goal is not particularly served by the prioritization, too many Heffenweisers, the prioritization of teachers, which I support for other reasons. I do not believe what I stated. Okay, let's try this one more time. Let me take another sip here. It's all this goddamn double talk, and that's the other thing. It's very interesting is the verbosity of some of these people. Like there's a concise way of framing these statements, but they don't want to for this exact reason. All right, here we go. I do not believe I stated what is paraphrased. Teachers should not be included as essential workers if a central goal of the committee is to reduce health inequities. I may have said something that could be mistaken for that. Like teachers shouldn't be vaccinated because they're white. Yeah, I can see how that could be misconstrued as teachers should not be listed because of health inequities. To see, this is silly. He's literally trying to walk back what he's saying while not walking back what he's saying. He's just rephrasing it and saying it in a different way. Okay, I'm just going to read through this. I'm sorry. I may have said something that could be mistaken for that. I just think essential workers and those who should be prioritized to reduce inequities are overlapping, but not identical groups of people, he said. A senior economist at the Economic Policy Institute disagreed with Lipsitch's comments in the New York Times article and provided a race-based conclusion of her own while arguing that teachers should be prioritized in the vaccine distribution because their students are mostly black and brown. White kids don't go to school. When you talk about disproportionate impact and you're concerned about people getting back into the labor force, many are mothers. And they will have a harder time if their children don't have a reliable place to go, she said. And if you think generally about people who have jobs where they can't telework, they are disproportionately black and brown. They'll have more of a challenge when childcare is an issue. All right, I'm going to put the rest of this article up. You guys get the point. The reason why I'm reading this article is because, interestingly enough, and ironically enough, the left contradicts itself. How? I will point to article number 2. Cornell University offers exemption to mandatory flu vaccination policy for BIPOC students. And this flu policy has also been extended for COVID. So the only people required to get COVID vaccinations, and I'll keep this article in the description as well, the only people required to get COVID vaccinations at Cornell are white kids. So which one is it? Is it we don't want to give it to white people? We do want to give it to white people? See, because according to the New York Times, we need to give it to black people. Because health inequities. Horseshit like that. But according to Cornell, no, that's racist. If we mandate that black people get it, that's racist. So we're only going to give it to white people, mandatorily. Well, which one is it? And this is the problem when you venture off the path of reason and logic. This is where you end up, in the weeds of talking circles around yourself. In the weeds of not knowing which side is up, which side is down. You literally have two institutions, liberally charged institutions, one being an academic university of higher learning, Cornell, which is, I believe, an Ivy League school. So here you go again. Saying that, no, we're not going to mandate that black people get COVID get the COVID vaccination because that's racist. Even though in the same breath they say we're going to mandate that white people get it. That is also racist. But this is the world they've created for themselves, where literally nothing makes sense. It's all about just saying the most extreme thing you can say and then looking to see how many people clap. And if no one claps, say the opposite. And if no one claps, say the opposite. Just keep saying opposite shit, even though you'll end up saying the same shit until somebody claps. So I don't know what the fuck's going on with these universities, these places of higher learning, but wow. Maybe we should take like I said this a long time ago, that Donald Trump's presidency was one of the silver linings of Donald Trump's presidency is we got to really see how deep the corruption ran and how corroded these organizations were. Like morally, how morally corroded these organizations were and are. Whether it be our mainstream media, whether it be social media, whether it be these global organizations like WHO and CDC, whether it be higher academia, we get to really see the world we're living in. And any person who would call themselves a doctor that says we need to withhold a vaccination that is going to save lives because these people are white or these people are black should not be a doctor anymore. They should not be teaching young, impressionable minds anymore. They should not be informing. This is how you get those idiots in the streets burning shit down because they were taught by motherfuckers like this. So, man, drain the swamp, that's just the start. We need a total, I almost said reset. Can't say that. That means something completely different. We need a total overhaul of all of these institutions. And I mean, we're going to have to start, one task at a time. I get that. But wow, you have doctors actually saying we should not vaccinate these people because there's too many white people. And I was thinking the other day, as far as like, you see all these people out in the streets protesting, like these black kids and some of these Hispanic kids and all these other, these non-white kids who believe that America is actually worse today or comparable to what it was at the time of the civil rights movement, which is just inane and completely asinine. But they grow up hearing these stories, right? They grow up seeing these movies. They grow up, it's romanticized in their mind. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. You do want to pass history down. You do want to learn from the past. But they hear all these things. They see the struggles and hear about the struggles that people who came before them, people in their family went through, and they understand that their life is nothing like that. So maybe you have some who are searching for some kind of meaning, who are trying to connect with that part of their family by embellishing these circumstances or trying to find problems where they don't exist. That's not necessarily where I'm trying to go with this. The point is, they got this way by hearing about the past, right? And that formulated a reaction. Well, now let's flip it and go the other way. You have these white kids being brought up now, being told they're the enemy, being told their grandma can't get a vaccine because she's white. Seeing Black Lives Matter, but you can't put up White Lives Matter. Being told, especially if they're a white heterosexual male, that they're the root of all evil. And what reaction do you think that will elicit from them when they grow up? Right? If we have these black and brown kids who actually didn't go through any of the things that their family went through, but they've turned out to be psychotic, race-obsessed monoliths that are hell-bent on destroying America, what do you think is going to come of the people who arguably are the most oppressed people right now across the board in America. Just food for thought. Anyway, I'm up out of here, man, and I will get up with you guys tomorrow. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your Saturday. I'm going to go smoke some wings. Peace out.